Great to see you here again. My name is Luc de Custer, founder of the Custer Academy. And in this new video, I'm going to talk about how we can create a project budget and identify the critical path position. So we have to see what will be the budget over time for the project and what will be the baseline, the cost baseline. And the cost baseline relates to the critical path position. But before we continue, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell button, and every time we have a new video, YouTube will inform you about it. Let's have a look first at the activities and costs. Now, when we have to complete the activities, we have to understand the cost profile and how the costs are spread over the duration of the activities. What we want to have is an as realistic cost allocation as possible, because we're going to use that later to report progress of the project of the activities. Now, we have to see that all is as realistic as possible. And when we look at allocations, there are typically a certain number of cost allocations that we can use. Even allocation or even loading means that the same amount is spread over all the periods of the activity. Front and back loading means that we load the cost respectively in the front or in the back. Percentage loading, we have a percentage overview over the different periods of the activity. And then we also have what we call custom loading, which can be the result when we rearrange the allocation of resources, for example, over the activities. Now, the first thing we can find is what we call the project costs in early start position. In order to explain what we are doing, we suppose that the costs are even loaded. It's a simplification, but it shows the principle. In reality, this can be different, and the program that you are using will probably do that. All the activities start in their early start position, and we find the overview here. So I said for all the activities, and the bold one are critical path activities, I put them, let's say, evenly over the duration of the activities. And what we're going to do, what we see now, is the cost allocated to all the activities. And the first step to do is to add up all the costs per period, per column. And we call that the time phase budget. That's the budget that we have over time. So basically what we see here is the overview of those costs, and I added the color so that you can see how it looks like, which are the critical path positions. So we find for period 1, the time phase budget is 10, and we do that for all the different periods. The next thing to do is to calculate what we call the cumulative budget. And the cumulative budget, we add the cost of that period to the previous period. So for the first one, we don't have anything before, so we have 10. For the second period, we have 10 plus 10 is 20. For the third, we have 15 plus 20 is 35. And we continue like that. And at the end of this project, at period 10, we see that the total cost or the budget at completion of this project is 80,000 euro, whatever monetary unit you are using. Now, the second thing that we can do is to look at the projects in late start position. Now we start all the activities in the late start position. And what we have here is that those activities are moved, except the activities which are on the critical path. We cannot move them because there is no slack. We move all the other activities in the slack. And we see that the time phase budget is different from the previous budget, but the cumulative budget, of course, also. Nevertheless, at the end of the project, the budget at completion still has to be the same. We didn't change anything, so whatever we do, the budget at completion has to be the same, whatever the result is. What we're going to do is move the activities. We're going to move those activities because we have to resolve resource issues. We want to reduce the amount of slack. All these things together is basically leading to the schedule baseline, and it gives us the planned start and finish times of all the activities. And that's what we have here. So now we have some changes here. Activity B is starting at a different position. It's somewhere between the early start and the late start. The other thing we have is the activity E, which we changed also. And we see the different budget, the cumulative budget in early start, the cumulative budget in late start, and the cumulative budget in actual or planned start. And we see at the end that we find again the same budget at completion. And the last line, that's the planned start position. And here we have in fact the cost baseline. Now when we look at the critical path position, here I have another exercise that I used. It's a little bit different. This shows it's a little bit nicer. We have the cumulative budget early start, which is in blue. We have the cumulative budget in late start, which is the reddish orange line. And then we have the cumulative budget in planned start, which is the gray line. And we see the two extreme positions are the blue and the red line. The blue line has all the slack maximum flexibility, while the red line has no slack, no flexibility. And the gray line is somewhere in between. Now, what we want to have here is the closer the gray line is to the blue line, to the early start position, the more flexibility we have. The closer it's to the red line, the less flexibility we have. And it's important to understand when we look at a project, what is our overall flexibility? Now, when we look at this, there are two other elements that are important, because when we look at the spending in the blue line, we're spending the money early. With the red line, we're spending the money later. And the gray line is somewhere in between. When we look at a financial evaluation, the later we start with the activities, the better financial outcome we have. Nevertheless, we have less flexibility, and we have to choose here what will be the actual solution, the actual schedule baseline and the cost baseline that we will have. Very important to see that although the intermediate values are basically in many cases different, at the end, at period 15, the budget at completion is still the same for all the budget lines. Now, when we go from cost to budget, we have different elements. We can start at the bottom. We start with the activity estimates. We build them into work packages estimate. We link them to control accounts, who's going to pay. And then we have the project estimate. In this case, we have the project estimate, which is $1,550,000. We have contingency reserves defined at $250K. So now it gives us a cost baseline of $1,800K. And that's the cost baseline for the project. Management reserves are added because the management wants to have some reserves to make decisions. And then we get the cost budget, which is $1,900,000. Now that $100,000, the management reserves are not part of the cost baseline of the project. Now, when we look at the project over time, we have to look at the S-curve. That's the S-curve that we have. These are the elements that we want to realize, the overview of the cost. And we have here company budget allocations, for example, 3 months. And what we do is that for every period of 3 months, we have sufficient money, budget available to do the work. Now, as long as we have a budget, we can continue working. When there is no budget anymore, we have to stop working. Now, these allocations in this case are done every 3 months, but it depends on the situation that you have in the company. So the blue lines are the allocated budgets. And like I said, whatever money we spend, as long as we're below the allocated budgets, we still can continue working on the project. So that was it for this video. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell button, and every time we have a new video, YouTube will inform you about it. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.